There are moments in human history when the facts refuse to fit the story we have been told. Moments when ancient structures rise from the earth with a level of precision no tools of their era should have achieved. When old maps depict continents no explorer of the time had ever seen. When forgotten manuscripts whisper about a past that does not match the comfortable version of history written in modern textbooks. And when great civilizations appear and vanish almost as if they were erased on purpose. For centuries, scholars, archaeologists, and researchers have tried to piece together these fragments. But the deeper they search, the clearer one unsettling truth becomes. These mysteries do not stand alone. They behave like scattered fragments of a much larger narrative. A narrative that someone or something may have tried to hide from the memory of humanity. By the end of this journey, you will see a pattern that has left researchers around the world questioning everything they thought they knew. A pattern suggesting that the secrets buried across Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and the Americas may all point back to a single missing chapter in human history. But before we reach that possibility, we must step into a world filled with unanswered questions, a world of sealed tombs, undeciphered texts, impossible engineering, and the ruins of a past that refuses to be forgotten. Before we go any deeper, feel free to tap the like button and settle in for what is about to unfold. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there. Your messages always help guide these journeys. And as always with our videos, the images you see are simply meant to support the story. Thank you for being here and for supporting this exploration. Prepare yourself. What you are about to explore may challenge the very foundations of what we believe about our origins, our ancestors, and the true age of human civilization. Stay with this story until the end, because the deeper we travel, the more these mysteries begin to connect in ways few people have ever noticed. Now let us begin the journey into the greatest ancient enigmas ever discovered. And remember this, the past is rarely what it appears to be. Across continents and across ages, ancient cultures left behind clues that defy everything we understand about history and human capability. Some of these mysteries lie buried under desert sands. Others are hidden beneath collapsed temples, inside sealed tombs, or deep within mountain ranges no explorer dares to enter. What connects them is a single shared trait. They should not exist according to the timeline of human civilization. Our journey begins with one of the most protected archaeological sites on Earth, a place where the past has been intentionally sealed for more than 2,000 years. Beneath the green hills of Shanxi province in central China lies one of the most forbidden places on the planet. It is the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor to unify China and a ruler whose ambition shaped the destiny of a continent. Though the world has marveled at the terracotta army surrounding his burial mound, what lies at the center of the complex remains untouched, unentered, and unseen since the day it was sealed. Historical records describe the tomb not as a simple resting place, but as a vast underground kingdom. More than 700,000 laborers were said to have worked on it, carving out chambers, passageways, and artificial landscapes meant to mirror the emperor's empire. Ancient texts speak of rivers and lakes of liquid mercury flowing through the halls, representing the great waterways of China. Above, a ceiling decorated with pearls was crafted to resemble the night sky. But what is most striking is this. Modern soil analysis around the burial mound revealed mercury concentrations dozens of times higher than normal levels. The ancient descriptions, long dismissed as exaggeration, suddenly appeared disturbingly accurate. Despite its importance, the central chamber has never been opened. Not once. Archaeologists fear that disturbing it would destroy everything inside before it could be studied. When the terracotta warriors were excavated, their vibrant colours faded within minutes of exposure to the air. If the same thing happened inside the emperor's tomb, any scrolls, fabrics, or fragile objects would disintegrate instantly. Others believe there is more at stake. In Chinese culture, imperial tombs are sacred. Opening them is seen as a violation, a disruption of ancestral order. Some officials argue that the world is not ready for what may lie inside, and some researchers quietly suspect the presence of technologies, texts, or knowledge that do not fit comfortably within the accepted history of China. For now, the tomb remains a silent world beneath the earth, sealed, untouched, waiting. But it is only the beginning, because thousands of miles away, another tomb belonging to another legendary emperor has been missing for 800 years, not sealed, not protected, simply vanished. Across the wide grasslands of Mongolia, the wind sweeps over an empty horizon. There are no markers, no ruins, no monuments. Yet somewhere beneath these endless plains lies the undiscovered resting place of a man who changed the world more than almost any ruler before or after him. Genghis Khan, the founder of the largest contiguous empire in human history, was one of the most powerful figures to ever walk the earth. And yet, 8 centuries after his death, no one has ever found his tomb. According to Mongolian tradition, Genghis Khan demanded absolute secrecy for his burial. The accounts describe a funeral unlike any ever recorded. After his death in 1227, a group of loyal soldiers escorted his body back to Mongolia. Along the way, they were said to have killed every person they encountered so that no witness could reveal the route. When they reached the burial site, the soldiers who handled the body were executed. Then another group was ordered to kill that group. And finally, another group eliminated them, so not a single person could pass on the location. Some chronicles say thousands of horses were ridden over the land to erase all traces of the burial. Others describe rivers being diverted to flood the grave, or forests planted on top of it. A few legends speak of a young camel buried with the emperor, and of its mother returning each year to the same spot in mourning. Later generations claimed this was how his descendants found the sacred place of their ancestor. But in the modern age, with satellites, drones, and remote sensing technology, why has the tomb still never been found? Part of the reason lies in the land itself. The region believed to contain the tomb is near the mountain of Burkhan Khaldun, an area the Mongolian people consider sacred. No excavation is allowed there. Even scientific teams with government approval have been asked to withdraw by local families who view digging as an act of disrespect, not only to Genghis Khan, but to the spirit of the land itself. In Mongolia, the past is deeply alive. The idea of disturbing the great Khan is unthinkable. Over the last several decades, researchers from multiple countries launched extensive surveys. Thousands of volunteers studied satellite images. Teams used drones and magnetometers to search for hidden chambers underground. Nothing conclusive has ever appeared. Not a single artifact linked to the tomb has surfaced. There is only silence, and that silence raises even deeper questions. If the tomb was truly filled with treasures gathered from across the empire, from China to Persia, from Russia to the Middle East, why has no trace ever emerged? Could it be that the tomb was constructed in a way far more complex than ancient accounts suggest? Or is there a possibility that the emperor was not buried in a single location at all? A few daring theories propose that the burial may be part of a vast hidden complex beneath the mountains, a system of chambers and corridors similar to the forgotten temples found in other ancient cultures. Others believe that the body might have been cremated and the ashes scattered, and that the tales of a tomb were decoys meant to confuse enemies. But there is another possibility, rarely spoken of in academic circles. Some researchers have noted that cultures across the world sometimes built sacred tombs designed not to be found. Tombs meant to protect knowledge, power, or relics considered too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands. If Genghis Khan was buried in such a place, then it was not meant for discovery by future generations. Today, the vast grasslands remain undisturbed. The horses still run, the mountains still stand, and the tomb of the world's most feared and respected conqueror remains hidden, somewhere in the earth, untouched for 800 years. Yet this is only one of many mysteries suggesting that the past we think we know may be far more complex than the history we are taught. And in a quiet village in France, another discovery once surfaced that challenged everything we understand about the size and shape of the human body. In the winter of 1890, in a quiet village in southern France called Castelnau, an anthropologist named Georges Vacher de Lapouge made a discovery that still troubles researchers today. While excavating a Bronze Age burial mound, he uncovered 3 large bone fragments. At first glance, they looked human, but the measurements, once taken, revealed something that should have been impossible. The bones were enormous. A section of a femur, part of a tibia, and a fragment believed to be from an upper arm. When Lapouge studied them, he estimated that the person to whom they once belonged could have stood more than 3.5 meters tall. That is beyond the stature of any known human in recorded history. Lapouge published the findings in a respected scientific journal of the time. Other scholars examined the bones, and surprisingly, many agreed that they were human in form, not animal, not deformed, simply too large. Then something even stranger happened. The bones were sent to the University of Montpellier for further analysis. And after that they disappeared. No modern researcher has seen them since. The archives contain only old drawings, measurements, and brief descriptions. Why would bones that could rewrite the limits of human biology simply vanish? Some historians believe they were misplaced, lost during the reorganization of collections. Others think they were destroyed in wartime, but there are also those who suspect a more deliberate act. Throughout the 19th century, several discoveries of unusually large skeletons were reported across Europe and North America. Most were dismissed, explained away, or forgotten. In some cases, the remains disappeared just as the Castelnau bones did. Skeptics argue that Lapouge may have misidentified animal bones, perhaps those of a prehistoric bear. But that explanation raises its own problem. Several anatomists of the era examined the fragments and insisted they were human. If they were mistaken, then how did multiple experts come to the same wrong conclusion? Local traditions make the story even stranger. In the region around Castelnau, old legends speak of giant beings who roamed the land long before recorded history. Some tales describe a creature who sheltered in nearby caves. Such folklore is common across many cultures. The ancient Greeks spoke of the Cyclopes. The Bible speaks of the Nephilim. Norse legends describe Jotnar, but myths alone are not evidence, unless perhaps they remember something older than we expect. The case of the Castelnau giant leaves us with an uncomfortable choice. Either Lapouge discovered something extraordinary and the evidence was lost, or he found something ordinary and the scientific community of the time made extraordinary errors in judgment. Yet one detail keeps this mystery alive. In the same decade, near the town of Montpellier, additional oversized skulls and bone fragments were reported. They too were sent to academic institutions. They too disappeared. Coincidence or pattern? Today, the burial mound remains silent. No modern excavation has recovered anything similar. No new evidence has emerged, but the measurements recorded in 1890 still do not fit neatly within the known limits of human anatomy, and the disappearance of the bones only deepens the mystery. If such beings ever existed, they would reshape our understanding of human evolution. If they did not, then we are left with a question just as intriguing. Why did so many people in so many places tell stories about them? The truth may be buried in ancient soil, or it may have vanished with the bones themselves. But our next mystery reveals something even more difficult to explain. Not bones, not legends, but an entire underground city carved with impossible precision, hidden beneath farmland in eastern China. In the summer of 1992, in a rural village in Zhejiang province, China, a farmer attempted something simple. He wanted to drain a large water pit near his home, a pond that had existed for as long as anyone in the village could remember. But when the water level fell, everyone watching realized the pond was not a pond at all. Beneath the surface was a cavern. And not just any cavern. Its walls were smooth, its ceiling arched, and its surfaces covered in parallel markings as if cut with a giant machine. Curious, the villagers drained more ponds across the area. One by one, underground chambers emerged. Not natural caves, but vast halls carved with astonishing precision. By the end of the discovery, at least 20 large caverns had been revealed, each one reaching more than 30 meters high. Together, they formed what appeared to be a massive subterranean complex stretching beneath the farmland. But the most baffling detail was this. No historical record mentions their construction. Not a single page in the extensive chronicles of ancient China describes anything resembling the Longyou caves. For a civilization known for meticulous documentation, this silence is nearly impossible to explain. When archaeologists began studying the site, the mystery grew deeper. Every cave appeared carved by hand, yet the walls were astonishingly straight and clean. The distinctive chisel-like patterns, running in identical, orderly strokes, covered every wall from ceiling to floor. The carvings were consistent across all the caves, suggesting a unified plan and a coordinated workforce. But how large a workforce would it take? Some researchers estimated that just one of the caves required the removal of more than 1 million cubic feet of solid sandstone. Multiply that by 20 caves, and the labour becomes almost unimaginable. Even with modern tools, the excavation would be a monumental project. With ancient tools, it would require a massive organisation, careful planning, and an incredible amount of time. And yet, there is no trace of tools, no inscriptions, no artifacts, no signs of habitation, no soot from torches, no bones, nothing. Who built these caverns? How long did it take? And why did they vanish without leaving even a single written record? Several theories have been proposed. Some believe the caves served as ancient granaries or military storage facilities. Others suggest religious or ceremonial purposes. A few argue that they may have been royal tombs or underground palaces that were abandoned before completion. But none of these explanations address the scale, the precision, or the complete absence of any cultural remains. Then there is the most unsettling possibility, that the caves belong to a culture older than the earliest known dynasties of China, a culture whose knowledge, purpose, and identity were erased long before recorded history began. Modern researchers attempted to date the caves, but sandstone offers few clues. Based on erosion patterns, some suggest the caverns could be more than 2,000 years old, dating back to the Qin or early Han dynasties. However, others argue they could be far older, old enough to belong to an era no surviving document remembers. Even today, the caves remain largely unstudied. Their lower chambers are flooded, their upper ceilings are unstable, and their sheer size makes exploration difficult. Most of the complex remains inaccessible, still filled with water that has quietly preserved whatever lies beneath. The Longyou caves represent one of the most mysterious engineering feats in the ancient world, a place where craftsmanship, labour, and purpose meet in complete silence. A work so immense that its absence from history is as puzzling as its construction. But while the Longyou caves raise questions about how ancient people carved stone with such precision, our next mystery confronts something even more extraordinary. Stones not carved into chambers, but lifted as entire blocks weighing hundreds of tons. Stones that modern machinery can barely move. In the fertile Bekaa Valley of Lebanon stands a site that challenges not only the engineering abilities of the ancient world, but also the limits of our imagination. Baalbek, once a major religious and cultural centre, is famous for its Roman temples. But beneath the ruins of the Temple of Jupiter lies something far older and far more mysterious. Three immense stone blocks form the foundation of the ancient platform. Together, they are known as the trilithon. Each block measures nearly 20 meters in length, more than 4 meters in height, and weighs an estimated 800 tons. To put that into perspective, each individual block is as heavy as a fully loaded commercial airplane. But the greatest puzzle is not their size. It is the fact that these stones are not random boulders left in place by natural forces. They were cut, shaped, and transported with incredible precision. They sit perfectly aligned, their surfaces joined so tightly that not even a blade can fit between them. And yet the Romans, despite their advanced engineering, left no record of moving stones of this scale. Their largest documented cranes could lift at most 1/10 of the weight of a single block. If the Romans did not move the trilithon stones, then who did? Just a short distance away in the ancient quarry lie even larger blocks. The stone of the pregnant woman, weighing around 1,000 tons. Another block discovered in 2014 weighs more than 1,600 tons, making it the largest known worked stone in human history. These stones remain partly embedded in the bedrock, as if construction was abandoned mid-project. Why carve such gigantic stones if there was no way to move them? Or did someone in the distant past possess knowledge and techniques now lost? Mainstream archaeology suggests that the Romans used a combination of wooden rollers, ropes, and earthen ramps, requiring hundreds or thousands of workers. But no written record supports this. No surviving tools match the requirements, and the physics of moving an 800-ton block across uneven terrain remain almost impossibly difficult even for modern equipment. This has led many researchers to suspect that the massive platform beneath the Roman temple predates Roman occupation, that the foundation may have been built by a much earlier culture whose identity is unknown. Supporting this theory is a pattern seen across the world. In Peru, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman features polygonal stones fitted with unbelievable precision. In Egypt, massive stone blocks appear in structures older than the pyramids. Across the planet, ancient builders worked with stone on a scale far beyond what their societies should have managed. Is Baalbek part of this same global phenomenon? Some speculate that the megalithic foundation served an astronomical purpose, aligned with celestial events. Others suggest it was part of a much older temple, whose significance far predates the Roman world. More speculative theories argue that the site may have been a focal point of a civilization stretching back to the late Ice Age. A civilization capable of shaping and moving stone on a scale we cannot replicate today without advanced machinery. Yet for all the theories, one truth remains. The megaliths of Baalbek stand as one of the greatest engineering puzzles ever uncovered. Like a message carved in stone from a time before recorded history, they force us to reconsider what ancient builders truly knew. But the ancient world holds more than just impossible stonework. Some mysteries lie not in massive blocks, but in pages. Pages bound together in a single book so large and so strange that its creation inspired a legend darker than any found in archaeology. Deep inside the National Library of Sweden rests a book unlike any other ever created. It weighs nearly 75 kilograms, stands almost a full meter tall, and requires 2 people to lift it safely. Its name is the Codex Gigas, but the world knows it by another title, the Devil's Bible. According to medieval legend, this enormous manuscript was written by a single monk in a single night. Facing the punishment of being walled up alive for breaking his monastic vows, he begged for mercy and promised his abbot a miracle. He would write a book containing all the knowledge of the world before dawn. When he realized the task was impossible, he is said to have made a pact with the devil, trading his soul for supernatural assistance. To honor this unholy bargain, he supposedly painted a full-page portrait of the devil at the heart of the manuscript. That is the story. But the reality is no less mysterious. Modern scholars have determined that the book was written in the early 13th century at a monastery in Bohemia. What amazes researchers is not just its size, but its consistency. Every page, every letter, every line appears to have been written by one hand, in one style over many years. There are no signs of fatigue, no variations in ink flow, and no changes in handwriting. Whoever wrote it maintained perfect discipline and dedication for a time span far beyond the life of a typical medieval project. Inside the Codex Gigas is a strange mixture of texts: the entire Latin Bible, medical treatises, historical chronicles, exorcism rituals, astrological charts, lists of demons and instructions for summoning or binding them. It is as if the book was intended to be an encyclopedia of both divine and forbidden knowledge. Yet the most iconic feature remains the giant portrait. On one page, facing an image of a heavenly city, stands a grotesque depiction of the devil, horned, clawed, eyes wide and staring, larger than life. No other medieval manuscript features anything like it. Why was such a figure placed at the center of the book? What purpose did it serve? Over the centuries, the Codex Giga became a source of fear and fascination. It was believed to bring bad luck. Plagues, wars, and disasters were said to follow its movements. During the 30 Years' War, Swedish forces seized it as a war prize and brought it to Stockholm, where it remains today. Some claim that every time the book changed hands, misfortune followed. Its creation also raises a troubling question. Why would a monk, living in a remote monastery, dedicate decades of his life to assembling a book so immense that no ordinary person could ever use it? Why combine scripture with demonology? Why include remedies, calendars, and exorcisms all in one volume? Some researchers believe the Codex was meant to preserve knowledge in an age when war, disease, and political turmoil threatened cultural memory. Others argue that the manuscript may have had ritual significance, perhaps used only by high-ranking clerics or secret monastic orders. More speculative theories suggest that the Codex Gigas was intended as a vault of knowledge far older than its scribes, preserving remnants of ancient traditions or hidden teachings no longer accepted by the medieval church. But the truth is unknown. The book remains silent, as if guarding the secrets it was created to protect. And despite its centuries of study, no one has fully explained its purpose. Yet the Codex Gigas is not the only ancient structure that challenges our understanding of what early societies were capable of. In the hills of southeastern Turkey, an archaeological site was uncovered that predates agriculture, metalworking, and recorded history. A site that should not exist according to the timeline of human civilization. On a barren hilltop in southeastern Turkey lies a site that has forced historians to rethink the origins of human civilization. Gobekli Tepe, discovered in the 1990s, predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years and the Egyptian pyramids by 7,000. It is more than 11,000 years old, older than agriculture, older than pottery, older than anything resembling organized society. And yet, it is one of the most sophisticated archaeological sites ever uncovered. Beneath layers of soil lie circular temples built from massive T-shaped pillars, some weighing more than 10 tons. These pillars are arranged with deliberate precision, forming enclosures that appear to have held ritual or ceremonial significance. Carved into the stones are animals, symbols, and abstract figures that hint at a symbolic language so advanced that scholars still struggle to interpret it. What makes Gobekli Tepe extraordinary is not just its age, but what its existence implies. According to the traditional timeline, organized religion and monumental architecture emerged only after agriculture developed. Hunter-gatherers were thought to have lacked the social structure and resources needed for such complex construction. Yet Gobekli Tepe was built by people who were still nomadic, still dependent on wild plants and animals, still lacking the technology that would later define the rise of civilization. This challenges one of the most fundamental assumptions about human history. Instead of religion emerging from settled life, Gobekli Tepe suggests the opposite, that the need for ritual and spiritual expression may have come first, and that agriculture followed as a response to support gatherings at the site. But the mystery deepens. Around 8000 BC, long after its construction began, the entire complex was deliberately buried. Layer after layer of soil, stone fragments, and debris were used to fill in the enclosures. The process was intentional, careful, systematic, as if the builders wanted to preserve the site, not destroy it. Why would a prehistoric community bury a sacred temple complex that had required enormous labor to build? Some archaeologists believe the people who built Gobekli Tepe were undergoing a profound cultural shift, perhaps moving into early agricultural life and no longer needing the old rituals. Others suggest that the site was sealed to protect it from invaders or natural disasters. More speculative theories propose that the burial acted as a symbolic closure, a deliberate ending of an era whose knowledge or practices were no longer meant to be used. But there is another, more provocative idea, that Gobekli Tepe represents the last echo of a much older tradition, a tradition inherited from a culture that survived the end of the last ice age, a culture whose memory exists only in myths of a lost world, destroyed by a global cataclysm. No written records survive from the era of Gobekli Tepe. No tools, no dwellings, no evidence of daily life. Only the monumental stones remain, standing silently on a hill that was hidden for thousands of years. A message carved into the earth from a time before history began, and while Gobekli Tepe raises questions about the origins of civilization, another structure in Asia challenges our understanding of ancient construction in a completely different way. Not built from multiple pieces, not assembled block by block, but carved downward from a single massive mountain of stone. In the rugged hills of Maharashtra, India, carved into the cliffs of the Ellora Caves complex, stands one of the greatest architectural enigmas in human history. Known as the Kailasa temple, it is not built from stacked stones or brickwork. It is carved, entirely, from a single colossal mass of basalt rock. Unlike the pyramids or ancient ziggurats, which were constructed from millions of individual blocks, the Kailasa temple was sculpted from the top downward. Craftsmen removed an estimated 400,000 tons of solid rock to reveal a freestanding temple complex complete with columns, halls, towers, gateways, and detailed relief carvings. The structure is more than 30 meters tall and covers an area twice the size of the Parthenon in Greece. The scale alone is astonishing, but the precision is even more remarkable. Every detail of the temple was carved by hand, sculpted figures of gods and warriors, ceiling patterns that match with perfect symmetry, staircases, vaulted chambers, and stone bridges that connect different levels, all shaped inside a trench cut vertically into the mountain. This method of construction is reversed compared to almost every other monumental structure on Earth. Instead of building upward, the ancient engineers carved downward, removing stone with such accuracy that any mistake would have ruined the entire project. According to traditional history, the temple was built in the 8th century during the reign of King Krishna I. Local legends tell a different story. One story describes a queen who prayed for the recovery of her husband. She vowed to fast until she could see the shikara, the temple roof, completed. To fulfill her wish, the architect claimed he could carve the temple from the top down in a single week. Although this tale is likely symbolic, it contains an important clue. Even with thousands of workers, the speed and precision required to carve such an immense structure within the recorded timeline borders on the impossible. Modern archaeologists estimate that if workers removed rock at an optimistic rate using traditional tools, the project would have taken hundreds of years. Yet inscriptions and historical records suggest it was completed in less than 2 decades. No tools from the construction have been found. No scaffolding remains. No detailed records describe how the temple was created. It simply exists, fully formed, standing as if it emerged from the earth itself. More perplexing is the absence of intermediate stages. Many nearby caves show signs of incomplete carvings, abandoned chambers, or early attempts at excavation. But Kailasa has none of that. The entire temple complex appears to have been executed with a single coherent plan from the very beginning. Some scholars propose that different teams worked simultaneously from multiple angles. Others believe that the builders possessed advanced knowledge of geometry and stone engineering far beyond what is commonly attributed to the time. More speculative theories suggest that the temple could be far older than believed, possibly built in phases by different cultures across millennia. Still others wonder whether the techniques used to carve the temple have been lost entirely, belonging to craftspeople whose methods were never recorded. Regardless of interpretation, the Kailasa temple remains one of the greatest engineering achievements in the ancient world, a structure that defies conventional timelines and challenges our assumptions about what early civilizations were capable of accomplishing. If Kailasa temple represents mastery over stone through removal, our next mystery represents mastery over knowledge itself, not carved into cliffs or stone blocks, but stored in scrolls. Scrolls that once held the sum of human understanding, collected in a single place, and then vanished. On the Mediterranean coast of Egypt, in the ancient city of Alexandria, once stood a monument to human knowledge unlike anything the world had seen before or since. The Library of Alexandria was not merely a building, it was an idea, a bold declaration that all wisdom, all discoveries, all histories, and all philosophies should be gathered in one place for the benefit of humanity. Founded in the 3rd century BC, during the reign of Ptolemy I and expanded under his successor, the library grew into the intellectual capital of the ancient world. Scholars from Greece, Egypt, Persia, Judea, Mesopotamia, and beyond travelled to Alexandria to study, debate, and record their findings. The library and its associated research centre, the Mouseion, became home to mathematicians, astronomers, physicians, poets, and philosophers. It is believed that the library held between 200,000 and 700,000 scrolls. These included mathematical treatises, astronomical observations, early maps of the world, histories of kingdoms now forgotten, medical records, poetry, plays, engineering notes, and translations of works from across the known world. Euclid developed the foundations of geometry within these walls. Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the Earth with remarkable accuracy. Archimedes corresponded with scholars here. The library was a living engine of discovery. And then it vanished. The destruction of the Library of Alexandria is one of the most debated events in history. Many people believe it was destroyed in a single catastrophic fire. But the truth may be far more complex. One theory points to Julius Caesar. In 48 BC, during his war against Pompey, Caesar set fire to the ships in Alexandria's harbour. The flames spread to the shore, destroying parts of the city and possibly damaging storehouses connected to the library. Some ancient writers claim that thousands of scrolls were lost in this incident. Yet, centuries later, visitors still describe the library as active. Another theory points to religious conflict. In the 4th century AD, as Christianity rose to dominance in the Roman Empire, pagan temples were targeted. The Serapeum, an important temple that housed a daughter library of Alexandria, was attacked and destroyed. It is unclear how many scrolls were lost. A final theory claims that the remaining scrolls were destroyed during the Muslim conquest in the 7th century. Yet this story appears only in sources written centuries after the event, causing many historians to doubt its authenticity. The most accepted view among modern scholars is that the library did not fall in a single moment. Instead, it declined slowly. political instability weakened state support. Wars depopulated the city. Fires damaged archives little by little. Over time, the collections dispersed, decayed, or were destroyed. What remained eventually disappeared into the dust of history. But the greatest mystery is not how the library was lost. It is what was lost with it. How much ancient knowledge vanished forever? Some believe that the library contained histories older than Egypt itself. Others speculate that it held records of early scientific discoveries that could have changed the world centuries earlier. Even more daring theories propose that scrolls from civilizations long erased by time were preserved within its walls. If any of these writings survived, they would rewrite entire chapters of human history. Today, no trace of the original library stands. Only fragments of quotations, references in surviving texts, and scattered echoes of what it once contained remain. The Library of Alexandria represents one of humanity's greatest tragedies, a reminder that knowledge, no matter how vast, can be fragile, and that entire worlds of information can vanish without a trace. But while the loss of the library shows how fragile knowledge can be, our next mystery shows how knowledge can survive in the most unexpected form. Bound not in papyrus, but encoded in a script no one has ever been able to read. Hidden in the archives of a small library in Hungary lies a manuscript that has resisted every attempt to decode it for nearly 2 centuries. Known as the Rohonc Codex, it is one of the most baffling documents ever discovered. Its pages contain a script that does not match any known language, alphabet, or writing system. Its symbols number in the hundreds, far more than any natural alphabet would require, and they appear to follow patterns that do not correspond to any established linguistic structure. The manuscript first surfaced in the early 19th century in the city of Rohonc, now located in Austria. It eventually made its way to the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, where scholars began attempting to decipher it. They failed. Every expert who has studied the Codex has come to the same conclusion. The writing looks deliberate, systematic, structured, but it yields no meaning. The script is written from right to left, yet some passages appear vertically oriented. The density of symbols varies dramatically across pages. Some sections look like narrative text, others resemble lists or poetry. And throughout the manuscript, more than 80 illustrations appear. The drawings depict scenes that seem both familiar and strange. Soldiers carrying swords and shields, religious ceremonies, people kneeling in prayer, sun symbols, crescent moons, crosses, even a scene that appears to show Jesus carrying a cross. But here is the contradiction. The imagery appears to blend Christian, pagan, and Islamic elements in ways that make no historical sense. No known culture combined these symbols in this manner, and if the manuscript was meant to convey a real religious tradition, its creators left no trace of that tradition anywhere else. Some researchers believe the Rohonc Codex might be a prayer book belonging to a secret sect, one that protected its teachings through coded writing. Others suggest it could be an early attempt at constructing a universal language, similar to the philosophical languages developed during the European Enlightenment centuries later. Still others think it might be an elaborate hoax created to deceive scholars. But that explanation creates its own problems. The manuscript contains more than 400 pages. The writing is consistent throughout. The symbols follow patterns too complex for a casual forger. The artwork demonstrates a coherent visual style. To produce such a hoax would have required immense effort from someone with detailed artistic and linguistic skill. And for what purpose? There is no evidence the Codex was ever used to gain money or influence. Modern attempts to crack the code have involved artificial intelligence and computational linguistics. None have succeeded. The structure of the writing resembles no natural language known to science. Some analysts believe it might be a cipher using a lost key. Others think it could encode multiple languages simultaneously. But without a reference text, its contents remain sealed. What makes the Rohonc Codex especially intriguing is the feeling it conveys, the sense that it hides something important, something meant for a very specific audience who understood the symbols, and that whoever created it wanted to protect that knowledge, even if it meant locking it away forever behind a wall of unreadable signs. If the manuscript is genuine, it may preserve the last traces of a forgotten belief system. If it is a hoax, it is one of the most sophisticated deceptions ever created. And if it is neither, then it may be something even more unusual, a relic of a world we no longer understand. But while the Rohonc Codex confronts us with a mystery of language, our next mystery challenges us with a puzzle of shape. Perfect spheres of stone scattered across a Central American landscape, carved with such accuracy that even modern tools would struggle to reproduce them. Deep in the lush rainforests and fertile plains of southern Costa Rica, hundreds of nearly perfect stone spheres lie scattered across the land. Some are small enough to hold in 2 hands. Others weigh more than 15 tons and measure over 2 meters in diameter. Their surfaces are smooth. Their shapes are remarkably precise, and their origins remain unknown. These enigmatic objects were first discovered in the 1930s when workers clearing land for banana plantations unearthed several large spheres buried beneath layers of soil. As more land was cleared, more spheres emerged. Dozens, then hundreds. Today, close to 300 verified spheres have been documented across the region. They are attributed to the ancient Diki culture, a society that flourished between the 7th and 16th centuries. But here is the mystery. The Diki people left no written records, no inscriptions, no explanations, and no tools have been found that could easily shape such hard stone into near mathematical perfection. The spheres are made primarily from granodiorite, a rock harder than granite. Carving it would have required extraordinary effort. Modern experiments show that shaping even a single sphere using traditional techniques would take months of labour. Achieving the precision seen in many spheres would take even longer. And yet, the Diki created hundreds. What were they for? Several theories attempt to answer this question. Some researchers believe the spheres were placed in front of homes to signify status or power. Others propose that they were markers aligned with astronomical events or constellations. Certain sites show sphere placement in patterns that might represent star clusters or solar calendars. But many spheres were moved from their original contexts long before archaeologists could study them. Early settlers dynamited some spheres because they believed gold was hidden inside. Others were rolled away to decorate gardens, parks, or government buildings. Entire arrangements were lost before their significance could be understood. Despite these losses, what remains is still striking. Some spheres appear deliberately arranged in straight lines, triangles, or arcs. Others were found along ancient pathways, possibly marking ceremonial routes. A few seem to have been positioned in pairs or groups, as if representing duality or family structures. But the most perplexing possibility is the simplest one. The spheres may have been symbols, icons of cosmic balance, representations of the sun, or metaphors for perfection. Cultures across the world used circles and spheres to represent unity, eternity, or the divine. Perhaps the Diki were no different. Yet one detail refuses to be explained. If the spheres were common cultural objects, why did the Diki create so many of them? Why invest so much labour in crafting shapes that required immense effort but left no written instructions or traditions behind? Some archaeologists have noticed similarities between the spheres and ancient stone balls found in other parts of the world, such as Scotland and the Adriatic. Though separated by thousands of kilometres and thousands of years, these artefacts share a geometric precision that is difficult to dismiss as coincidence. Did different cultures independently discover the symbolic power of the sphere? Or is there a deeper, older tradition hidden behind these shapes? The stone spheres of Costa Rica remain silent. Their surfaces bear no markings. Their purpose has been lost, and the civilization that created them vanished long before the Spanish arrived. But if the spheres represent the forgotten expressions of an ancient people, our next mystery represents the forgotten homeland of an entire lost world. A landmass now submerged beneath the cold waves of the North Sea. Under the cold grey waters of the North Sea lies the remains of a vanished land, a world that once connected the island of Britain to continental Europe. Today, ships pass over it without noticing anything unusual, but 10,000 years ago, Doggerland was a thriving landscape of forests, rivers, lakes, and wide grassy plains. It was home to thousands of people. Then, almost overnight in geological terms, it disappeared. The story of Doggerland begins at the end of the last ice age. As massive glaciers melted across Europe, sea levels rose steadily. The lowlands between Britain, Denmark, the Netherlands, and Germany formed a wide land bridge filled with rich vegetation and abundant wildlife. Archaeologists believe that this region was one of the most desirable places to live in prehistoric Europe. Hunters followed herds across sprawling meadows. Families built shelters along riverbanks, and ancient communities left behind tools, weapons, and traces of daily life. Over time, however, the sea crept closer. The warming climate caused the ocean to rise metre by metre. Coastal forests drowned. Marshlands expanded. Lakes merged with the sea. Doggerland began to shrink. Then came the final blow. Around 6200 BC, a massive underwater landslide off the coast of Norway triggered the Storegga tsunami, one of the largest natural disasters of the ancient world. Walls of water surged across the North Atlantic, smashing into the shores of northern Europe. Archaeological evidence suggests that the tsunami swept across the last remaining highlands of Doggerland, devastating communities and transforming the region forever. Within a few centuries, the rising sea swallowed the rest. By 5500 BC, Doggerland was gone. Only the fishing banks known today as Doggerbank remain as a faint echo of the ancient landscape. But how do we know this lost world existed? Fragments of it are still being recovered. Fishermen have pulled up mammoth bones, reindeer antlers, and flint tools from the seabed. Divers have found traces of ancient forests preserved far below the waves. Archaeologists using seismic data from oil exploration companies have reconstructed entire river systems and coastlines that once crossed the region. The discoveries are astonishing. Remains of red deer, aurochs, and wolves. Flint spear points belonging to Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. Even fossilized human footprints found in layers of submerged peat. The existence of Doggerland raises an intriguing question. How many other ancient landscapes vanished before written history began? And how many stories of lost lands, like the legendary Atlantis described by Plato, might be rooted in real geological events similar to the drowning of Doggerland? Some researchers argue that the collapse of Doggerland may have played a significant role in shaping early European cultures. As communities fled the rising waters, they spread into new territories, bringing with them stories of a drowned homeland. Others believe that the memory of Doggerland lived on through myths and oral traditions for generations after its disappearance. Perhaps the idea of a lost world beneath the sea is not merely a legend, but a memory preserved by human imagination. Doggerland reminds us of a simple truth. Civilizations, even the earliest ones, do not always rise and fall on land that remains stable. The earth itself shifts. Seas rise. Landscapes change. And entire worlds can vanish without leaving a trace, except for what the ocean occasionally returns to us. But while Doggerland shows us how a world can disappear beneath the sea, our next mystery shows us how ancient builders created monuments of such size and ambition that they seem almost impossible. Structures carved from stone so massive that even today moving them would test the limits of modern engineering. In the scorching heat of southern Egypt, where the desert meets the Nile, lies a quarry that supplied the stone for some of the greatest monuments of the ancient world. Here, among the red granite cliffs of Aswan, rests a monument that was never completed. Yet even unfinished, it reveals secrets about ancient engineering that defy modern understanding. The unfinished obelisk is the largest known stone object ever attempted by human hands. If completed, it would have stood more than 40 meters tall and weighed an estimated 1,200 tons. That is the weight of nearly 200 African elephants. It is so large that no modern crane could lift it in one piece. Yet more than 3,000 years ago, Egyptian workers carved it directly from the bedrock, as if such a task were routine. The obelisk lies in a shallow trench, still attached to the bedrock on one side. 3 of its faces are nearly smooth, shaped with remarkable precision. The 4th face remains connected to the earth, showing the initial stages of separation. Along its sides, archaeologists found pits where workers used pounding stones made of dolerite, a material harder than granite itself. The method was straightforward, but incredibly labor-intensive. Workers hammered the surface thousands of times, chipping away flakes of stone. But removing millions of kilograms of granite with hand tools would have required an unimaginable workforce and an equally unimaginable amount of time. Why attempt such a gigantic monument? Obelisks symbolize the sacred Benben stone, the mythical mound where creation began in ancient Egyptian cosmology. They were associated with the sun god and served as markers of divine authority. The unfinished obelisk was likely commissioned by Queen Hatshepsut during the 18th dynasty, a ruler known for ambitious architectural projects. She placed obelisks at Karnak and other temples, each carved from single pieces of stone. But none matched the scale of the one attempted at Aswan. What halted the project was a long fracture that formed during carving. The stone cracked deep within the bedrock, rendering the entire obelisk useless. Unable to repair or remove it, the workers abandoned the effort, leaving behind a snapshot of an extraordinary engineering process. But this abandoned monument raises questions that remain unanswered. How did the Egyptians intend to transport a stone weighing 1,200 tons from Aswan to temples hundreds of kilometers away? Boats have been proposed, but no evidence suggests that ships capable of carrying such weight existed. Even if they did, loading and unloading the obelisk would have been nearly impossible with known tools. Some scholars suggest that the obelisk represents the limit of ancient Egyptian engineering, a bold experiment that pushed technology to the breaking point. Others believe the Egyptians may have possessed techniques now lost, techniques that allowed them to quarry, move, and erect massive stones with efficiency that modern machines cannot replicate. More speculative theories propose that ancient builders used sound or vibration to break or move stone, a concept found in Egyptian legends. While no direct evidence supports this, the precision and scale of ancient stonework continue to inspire debate. The unfinished obelisk remains one of the most revealing archaeological sites in Egypt. It shows how ancient workers carved monumental stones. It shows their tools, their methods, and their ambitions. But it also hints at something deeper, a level of engineering and organization that should have been impossible for the era. If the Egyptians attempted such a massive monument, what else might they have built that has not survived? And how much knowledge has been lost to time? While the unfinished obelisk illustrates the extraordinary ambition of ancient builders, our next mystery raises a different kind of question. Not about the size of stones, but about why ancient constructions were built to begin with. A question buried deep beneath the sands of Egypt in a labyrinth described by ancient historians as one of the greatest wonders of the world. In the vast desert west of the Nile River, near the ancient city of Hawara, lies the buried remains of a structure described by early historians as one of the greatest architectural marvels of all time. The labyrinth of Hawara, built during the 12th dynasty of ancient Egypt, was said to be so immense, so complex, and so beautifully constructed that it overshadowed even the pyramids in magnificence. The Greek historian Herodotus, who visited Egypt in the 5th century BC, wrote that the labyrinth contained 3,000 rooms, 1,500 above ground, 1,500 below. He described winding corridors, spacious halls, hidden chambers, and a vast network of passageways carved with exquisite hieroglyphs. According to him, no visitor was ever allowed into the underground chambers, for they held the tombs of the kings who built the labyrinth and the sacred remains of crocodiles worshipped in the region. Herodotus claimed that the structure was so intricate that even with a guide, it was almost impossible not to become lost. Other historians of the ancient world, including Strabo and Diodorus Siculus, also described the labyrinth, confirming that it was real, enormous, and astonishingly elaborate. Yet today, almost nothing remains visible on the surface. What happened to this great wonder? Over thousands of years, earthquakes, floods, and constant looting reduced the labyrinth to rubble. Stones were removed and reused for other buildings. Sandstorms buried the foundations, and slowly the structure faded from memory. For centuries, scholars debated whether the labyrinth ever truly existed. Its descriptions seemed too exaggerated, too grand. Then, in the 19th century, archaeologists working near Hawara uncovered traces of massive foundations that matched ancient accounts. And in 2008, ground-penetrating radar surveys detected large rectangular structures beneath the sand, a grid-like pattern that aligned almost perfectly with the size and shape described by classical historians. But just when the world expected a major excavation, something unusual happened. Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities restricted access to the findings. Detailed results were never officially published. The researchers who conducted the survey waited years for permission to release their data, but no approval came. The project quietly ended. Why? Some believe the area is too unstable to excavate. Others argue that political concerns, funding limitations, or conservation issues halted the work. But the secrecy surrounding the findings has fueled speculation. Perhaps ancient documents or artifacts lie beneath the sand, potentially revealing forgotten periods of Egyptian history. Perhaps the underground chambers are dangerous, flooded, or filled with unstable debris. Or perhaps, as a few daring researchers suggest, the labyrinth holds information that would challenge established narratives about the ancient world. Whatever the truth may be, the labyrinth of Hawara remains buried beneath the desert, untouched and unexplored. A silent monument that once impressed the greatest historians of antiquity. But if Hawara raises the question of hidden chambers, our next mystery raises the question of hidden maps. Maps that depict coastlines unknown to the people of their time. Maps that challenge our understanding of exploration and ancient knowledge. In 1929, during the cataloguing of old documents in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, a rolled piece of parchment was discovered. When scholars unrolled it, they realized they were looking at one of the most extraordinary maps ever created. Drawn in 1513 by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, the map shows the western coast of Africa, the eastern coast of South America, and the northern coastline of a land that should not be there at all, Antarctica. But Antarctica was not officially discovered until 1820, more than 3 centuries later. And even more puzzling, the coastline on the Piri Reis map is shown not as it appears today under thick layers of ice, but as it would look if the continent were free of its ice cap. How could a 16th century map include details unknown to all explorers of its time? Piri Reis left notes on the map explaining that he compiled it using older charts. Some came from Portuguese explorers, some from Arab navigators, and at least one, he claimed, came from a map used by Christopher Columbus. But none of these sources explain the Antarctic coastline. nor do they account for the accuracy of certain South American features that were not officially charted until centuries later. The puzzle deepens. Modern analyses suggest that parts of the coastline on the map match features that would only be visible if Antarctica were free of ice. Geological studies show that the last time this might have been possible was thousands of years ago, long before any known civilization was capable of global exploration. Could Piri Reis have inherited information from a much older source? Some researchers propose that ancient mariners from forgotten civilizations may have sailed farther than modern historians acknowledge. Others suggest that ancient maps created by earlier cultures were copied and recopied through generations, eventually becoming the basis for Piri Reis's compilation. More speculative theories argue that the map is evidence of a prehistoric seafaring civilization, one that possessed advanced knowledge of astronomy, navigation, and cartography. According to this view, such a civilization may have suffered a catastrophic collapse during the end of the last ice age. The remnants of its knowledge could have survived only in fragments passed down through various cultures. Another mystery lies in the accuracy of the map itself. Some coastlines appear distorted or shifted, others are surprisingly precise. Scholars debate whether these distortions represent projection methods, primitive attempts at longitude measurement, or traces of an older, more advanced mapping technique. What is certain is that the Piri Reis map challenges the accepted timeline of exploration. It suggests the possibility that ancient people knew far more about the world than modern textbooks imply, but the map is only one piece of a larger puzzle. Across the Americas, Europe, Africa, and Asia, ancient structures and artifacts show evidence of knowledge that seems out of place for their time. And while the Piri Reis map raises questions about lost navigation skills, our next mystery raises questions about lost writing systems. A vast collection of ancient manuscripts hidden for nearly 2,000 years, discovered by accident, and containing some of the oldest surviving texts of the ancient world. In 1947, a young Bedouin shepherd searching for a lost goat threw a stone into a cave near the Dead Sea. Instead of hearing the dull thud of rock on sand, he heard the sound of pottery shattering. Curious, he climbed inside. What he discovered would become one of the most important archaeological finds of the 20th century. Inside the cave were large clay jars. Some were broken, some were still sealed, and inside them were ancient scrolls made of parchment and papyrus. These scrolls, eventually known as the Dead Sea Scrolls, would transform our understanding of religion, history, and the ancient world. Over the next decade, additional caves in the Qumran region were explored. Altogether, archaeologists recovered nearly 1,000 manuscripts in more than 25,000 fragments. These include some of the oldest surviving copies of the Hebrew Bible, texts previously unknown, and writings from Jewish groups that lived in the region 2,000 years ago. The scrolls date from the 3rd century BC to the 1st century AD, placing them among the earliest written records of many biblical stories. Before their discovery, the oldest known Hebrew manuscripts were from the medieval period. The scrolls pushed the textual history of the Bible back more than 1,000 years. But the Dead Sea Scrolls contain much more than scripture. There are sectarian texts describing the beliefs and practices of a mysterious community often associated with the Essenes, a Jewish sect that lived an ascetic life in the desert. Other writings include apocalyptic visions, commentaries on scripture, legal codes, and poetic hymns. Among them is the copper scroll, engraved on metal instead of parchment, listing the supposed locations of vast amounts of hidden treasure. One of the greatest mysteries surrounding the scrolls is how they ended up in the caves. Some scholars believe the Essenes hid them to protect their sacred writings from Roman soldiers during the Jewish revolt of the 1st century. Others argue that the scrolls represent a collection from various libraries across Judea, hidden away as Jerusalem faced destruction. But there is another puzzle. Some texts contain ideas or interpretations that differ sharply from later Jewish and Christian traditions. This raises questions about how religious beliefs evolved and which teachings were accepted or rejected over time. A few scrolls even describe figures and concepts that resemble early Christian practices, leading some researchers to wonder whether groups like the Essenes influenced the earliest followers of Jesus. The scrolls also reveal variations in biblical stories, differences in wording, differences in interpretation, entire passages that appear in some versions but not in others. These discoveries challenge the idea that ancient scripture was fixed or unchanging, but the scrolls hold deeper mysteries as well. Many are still unreadable. Some have never been fully translated. Others were damaged beyond repair by moisture, insects, or poor storage over the centuries. New imaging technologies continue to reveal previously invisible writing, suggesting that more secrets remain hidden in the fragments. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect is what the scrolls represent. They are a snapshot of a world in turmoil, a world of competing beliefs, prophetic visions, political upheaval, and spiritual searching. A world where different groups wrote, debated, and hid their sacred teachings in fear that they might be lost forever. The Dead Sea Scrolls remind us that history is not a single straight line. It is a tapestry of voices, each struggling to preserve their truth. And though these scrolls survived by chance, they show how fragile knowledge can be. But while these ancient writings survived in caves, our next mystery survived in an even harsher environment, the scorching heat of Death Valley, where stones appear to move across the desert floor as if guided by an unseen force. In one of the hottest and driest places on Earth, a barren landscape known as Racetrack Playa in Death Valley, an unexplained phenomenon has puzzled observers for more than a century. Large stones, some weighing more than 300 kilograms, appear to move across the desert floor entirely on their own, leaving long winding trails etched into the cracked mud behind them. No one has ever witnessed a stone in motion, and yet the evidence is undeniable. The tracks stretch for tens or even hundreds of meters. Some follow straight lines, others curve, twist, or suddenly change direction. Some stones travel together, others move separately. The patterns are varied and unpredictable, as if guided by invisible hands. For decades, scientists debated the cause. Early theories suggested strong winds, but the stones were too heavy. Others proposed that algae or mud reduced friction, but tests failed to confirm this. More speculative ideas included magnetic forces, earthquakes, or even hoaxes. But none of these explanations accounted for the complexity of the trails. Then in 2013, researchers finally observed the stones moving, but the discovery only deepened the mystery. During an unusually cold winter, a thin layer of water pooled on the surface of Racetrack Playa. Overnight, the water froze into sheets of transparent ice. As the rising sun warmed the ice, it began to break into large floating panels. Light winds pushed these ice panels across the shallow water, nudging the stones forward. Slowly, quietly, the stones slid across the mud beneath the melting ice. The movement was gentle, only a few centimeters per second. Yet over hours or days, the stones traveled long distances, leaving clear trails behind them. The phenomenon required a rare combination of conditions. Enough water to form a thin sheet, temperatures low enough for freezing, sunshine strong enough to melt the ice, and wind steady enough to push it all forward. But while this explanation solved many parts of the puzzle, it did not solve everything. Some stones move in ways that do not match the ice model. Their tracks are too sharp, too angular, or too deep. Some trails begin or end in ways that remain unexplained. Others show sudden shifts or stops that defy the behavior observed by researchers. And then there is the question of scale. The stones in the documented experiment were relatively small. Many of the largest stones at Racetrack Playa have never been observed moving at all, yet their trails remain fresh and distinct. Another mystery lies in the timing. The conditions needed for the ice movement are extremely rare. Years may pass without the playa filling with water, yet the stones continue to produce new trails every decade. Some researchers believe that multiple mechanisms may be at work, with ice movement accounting for many cases, while others remain unsolved. A few more speculative theories propose unknown geological or climatic factors. And of course, the phenomenon has inspired countless stories, from ancient spirits to extraterrestrial involvement. Whatever the cause, the sailing stones of Death Valley remind us that nature still holds secrets. Even in a world mapped, measured, and studied in detail, there are places where the Earth behaves in ways we do not fully understand. And while the stones of Death Valley move across the ground, our next mystery takes us far beneath it, into a pyramid described by pilots, denied by governments, and believed by many to be one of the greatest lost structures on Earth. In the rugged mountains of Shanxi province, among vast fields and isolated valleys, lies one of the most persistent archaeological mysteries in Asia. For decades, rumours have circulated about a colossal pyramid hidden somewhere in the region, a structure so large and so unusual that it has been called the White Pyramid of China. The first widely reported sighting occurred in 1945, when an American pilot named James Gaussman was flying over China during World War II. According to his account, he saw a massive, gleaming white structure rising from a valley floor. Its four faces were smooth and reflective. Its height, he claimed, was greater than that of any known pyramid in Egypt. He later reported the sighting to military authorities, but no action was taken. 2 years later, in 1947, another pilot, Maurice Shehan, reported a similar sighting. This time, blurry black and white photographs accompanied the story. The images showed a large pyramid-shaped mound, partially covered in vegetation, but unmistakably geometric. When these photographs were published in newspapers, they caused a sensation. Western archaeologists speculated about lost Chinese civilizations. Theories spread that the pyramid might be older than the earliest dynasties, possibly even predating recorded history. But the Chinese government dismissed the reports, claiming the structures were simply ancient burial mounds built during the Qin or Han dynasties. They insisted that no giant white pyramid existed. For decades afterward, foreign researchers were restricted from exploring the region, and the mystery only grew. Satellite images released in the late 20th and early 21st centuries revealed numerous pyramid-shaped mounds scattered across Shanxi province. Some measured more than 100 meters in height, rivaling Egypt's Great Pyramid. But none perfectly match the descriptions from the pilots. What makes the White Pyramid especially intriguing is the claim that it was once covered in white stone or a bright clay material that reflected sunlight. Local legends tell of a shining mountain that glowed under the sun, a description that fits the pilots' accounts but not the earthen mounds visible today. Could the white surface have eroded away over thousands of years? Or was it stripped for building materials? Or does the real structure lie deeper in the mountains, hidden from satellite imagery by vegetation and terrain? One theory suggests that the White Pyramid is a misidentified emperor's tomb. Another proposes that the pilots saw a Buddhist stupa or a natural formation. But none of these explanations fit the descriptions of its size, shape, and reflective surface. More speculative theories argue that the pyramid may belong to a lost civilization predating known Chinese dynasties. Some point to astronomical alignments among the region's pyramids, suggesting they may have been part of a vast ceremonial or scientific complex. Others believe they may contain sealed chambers similar to those described in ancient texts. What complicates the story further is the limited access researchers still face. Many of the pyramids in Shanxi are protected as cultural heritage sites. Excavation is either forbidden or extremely restricted. The government states that excavation would damage fragile structures or disturb sacred burial grounds. But some observers believe there may be other reasons for the secrecy. If inscriptions, artifacts, or architectural features were found that did not match established historical narratives, the implications could be significant. For now, the White Pyramid remains elusive. Whether it is a misunderstood burial mound, a lost monument, or something far older, the mystery endures because no one has been allowed to investigate fully. But while the White Pyramid may hide its secrets beneath layers of earth and official silence, our next mystery hides its secrets in stone far more directly. Massive blocks carved with precision so advanced that even modern builders struggle to understand how they were shaped. Across the ancient world, scattered across continents and separated by oceans, stand a series of monumental stone structures built with such precision and such immense blocks that later civilizations believed only giants or mythical beings could have constructed them. These structures are known today as Cyclopean walls, named after the Cyclopes of Greek mythology, the one-eyed giants said to possess superhuman strength. The most famous example sits in the high Andes of Peru, at the fortress of Sacsayhuaman. Here, massive stone blocks, some weighing more than 100 tons, fit together with such precision that even a sheet of paper cannot slide between them. Their edges are cut at complex angles, forming interlocking shapes that resist earthquakes and erosion. The surfaces are smooth, the joins are tight, and the craftsmanship appears almost machine-like. Yet the builders had no metal tools capable of cutting granite so cleanly, no wheels to transport the stones, and no written records explaining their methods. Other Cyclopean sites raise similar questions. In Mycenae, Greece, ancient walls contain limestone blocks so enormous that classical writers insisted the legendary Cyclopes built them. In Albania, Italy, and Turkey, ancient fortifications show the same construction style. Across the Mediterranean, on islands such as Sardinia and Malta, megalithic temples and towers appear with stonework that defies simple explanations. Even more puzzling is the fact that many of these structures show signs of reconstruction or reuse by later civilizations. The Incas built atop older foundations at Sacsayhuaman and Machu Picchu. The Greeks reused earlier Cyclopean walls. The Romans repurposed older megaliths. The pattern is consistent. Civilizations built upon the remnants of something older, something whose techniques they did not fully understand. How did these ancient builders move blocks weighing tens or hundreds of tons? How did they shape stones so precisely that not even modern tools can easily reproduce the fit? And why do similar building techniques appear in unrelated cultures separated by vast distances? Mainstream archaeology attributes these achievements to skilled labor, large workforces, and ingenuity. But even with these explanations, questions remain. Why choose blocks so large when smaller stones would have been easier to quarry, transport, and assemble? Why carve polygonal shapes that require perfect alignment when simple rectangular blocks would suffice? And why do some features, such as seamless joints and interior stone cavities, resemble modern engineering concepts? More speculative theories suggest a forgotten ancient tradition of stoneworking, passed down through generations and eventually lost. Others propose that these structures are remnants of a prehistoric global culture that spread techniques across continents long before the rise of recorded civilizations. Some researchers point to geological clues that support the idea of extreme antiquity. Weathering patterns on certain megaliths suggest they may be older than the cultures credited with building them. In some cases, erosion on the stones is so severe that they may date back to the end of the last ice age. This possibility raises profound questions. If these structures were built thousands of years earlier than currently believed, who built them, and what happened to their knowledge? Cyclopean architecture stands as silent proof that ancient builders possessed capabilities far beyond what traditional timelines allow. The stones themselves do not lie. They remain as they were placed, immovable records of a skill set that appears out of place in the archaeological record. But while Cyclopean walls challenge our understanding of ancient engineering, our final mystery challenges the very origins of civilization. Beneath layers of earth, hidden from the world for millennia, lies evidence of a culture that may predate all others. A discovery so old and so advanced that it forces us to reconsider the entire story of human history. When Gobekli Tepe was first uncovered, archaeologists believed they had found one of the oldest ceremonial sites in the world. But as excavations continued, a deeper truth began to emerge. Beneath the already ancient megalithic circles, buried under layers of soil and stone, lay even older structures. Enclosures far more eroded, pillars more primitive, carvings less defined. These layers push the origins of the site back thousands of years before the oldest known cities, before farming, before pottery, before the tools that should have been required to build such a place. This discovery shook the foundations of archaeology. If the upper layers of Gobekli Tepe were shocking at 11,000 years old, the lower layers suggested something even more astonishing. A civilization that began building monumental structures at the end of the last ice age, a time when humanity, according to accepted history, consisted only of scattered hunting bands struggling for survival. But the evidence pointed to something far more organized, far more capable, and far more mysterious. The pillars beneath the surface were rougher, but still set in circular formations. Some contained traces of carvings long eroded by time. Others appeared deliberately broken, as if dismantled when newer structures were built above them. This pattern suggested continuity, as if each generation built upon the work of those who came before. Hundreds, perhaps even thousands of years of continuous occupation. This raises an extraordinary question. How long had Gobekli Tepe been an important site? Some researchers propose that its origins could reach back 13,000 years or more. That would place its earliest construction near the end of the Younger Dryas, a period of dramatic climate change marked by sudden cooling, melting ice sheets, rising sea levels, and widespread extinctions. A period many scientists believe may have been triggered by a massive cosmic impact. If an advanced culture existed at that time, it might have faced catastrophic loss. Coastal settlements could have been destroyed by floods. Populations could have been scattered. Knowledge could have been lost. In such a world, Gobekli Tepe might have served as a refuge, a ceremonial center, or even a repository of memory for a people trying to preserve their identity after disaster. The builders of Gobekli Tepe left no pottery, no houses, no tools beyond simple blades and points, yet they moved multi-ton stones, carved sophisticated artwork, and designed temples aligned with celestial patterns. This combination of simplicity and sophistication makes no sense in the traditional archaeological framework. Unless the people who built it were inheriting skills from an older tradition. If so, where did that tradition come from? Some scholars believe that knowledge may have survived from earlier cultures that thrived before the end of the Ice Age. Evidence of advanced stonework in regions like Peru, Turkey, Malta, and Lebanon suggests a shared architectural language that appears suddenly and without clear origin. Further afield, myths from cultures around the world speak of lost civilizations, great floods, and teachers who arrived after catastrophe to rebuild society. The Sumerians wrote of the Apkallu, wise beings who restored knowledge after a great flood. Ancient Egyptians spoke of Zep Tepi, the first time when gods walked among humans and taught them the arts of civilization. In the Andes, legends tell of Viracocha, a tall, bearded figure who appeared after a global cataclysm to rebuild the world. These stories are recorded in cultures separated by oceans, civilizations that never met. Yet the themes are almost identical. Is this coincidence or memory? The more archaeologists uncover, the clearer it becomes that the timeline of human civilization may not be as linear as once believed. Instead of a steady rise from simple hunter-gatherers to complex societies, the evidence suggests cycles: growth, collapse, rebirth, loss, recovery. Gobekli Tepe may represent the earliest visible chapter of this cycle, but it may not be the beginning, only the oldest part that survived. And that brings us to the profound implication of this final mystery: the possibility that human civilization is older than we think, that the first complex societies emerged long before the earliest cities we know, that a previous civilization may have risen during the late Ice Age, only to be destroyed by a global catastrophe, and that Gobekli Tepe, along with the megaliths of the ancient world, may be its inheritance. We stand today at the surface of the story, but beneath the soil of Turkey, beneath the deserts of Egypt, beneath the oceans that swallowed Doggerland, and deep within the memories of myths told across the world, the faint traces of a forgotten world continue to call out. A world erased, a world buried, a world we are only beginning to rediscover. As our journey draws to a close, a pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Across continents, across ages, across cultures, separated by oceans and millennia, the mysteries of the ancient world share a subtle but unmistakable connection. They all point toward a story far older, far more complex, and far more extraordinary than the one traditionally told. The sealed tomb of Qin Shi Huang, untouched for 2,000 years, holds technologies and materials centuries ahead of its time. The missing tomb of Genghis Khan conceals the fate of a conqueror whose burial was hidden with unprecedented secrecy. The giant of Castelnau hints at biological possibilities that challenge the limits of our species. The Longyou caves reveal engineering methods unrecorded in any historical text. The megaliths of Baalbek display a mastery of stone that modern machines struggle to replicate. The Codex Gigas preserves knowledge that blends science, scripture, and ritual into a single monumental work. Gobekli Tepe pushes civilization back to the dawn of the Holocene. The Kailasa temple proves that ancient craftsmen carved stone with a precision bordering on impossible. The Library of Alexandria reminds us that entire worlds of knowledge can vanish without a trace. The Rohonc Codex shows that writing systems can emerge and disappear without explanation. The stone spheres of Costa Rica appear as symbols of a forgotten cultural language. Doggerland reveals that civilizations can be swallowed by rising seas. The unfinished obelisk demonstrates ambition far beyond the tools of its time. The labyrinth of Hawara suggests that ancient architects designed complexes so vast they could rival modern cities. The Piri Reis map challenges the limits of ancient navigation. The Dead Sea Scrolls show that history is shaped by which stories survive. The sailing stones of Death Valley reveal natural forces that mimic intentional design. The White Pyramid of China may conceal knowledge still hidden beneath earth and silence. And the Cyclopean walls of the ancient world stand as monuments built by hands guided by a skill that does not fit neatly into the accepted timeline. Each mystery raises its own questions, but together they ask something far greater. Is it possible that these sites are not isolated anomalies, but remnants of a deeper human past? That instead of a single straight line of progress, civilization rose and fell in cycles, shaped by cataclysms, climate shifts, and forgotten knowledge? That an earlier chapter of human history existed before the earliest cities, before the first kings, before the first written words? Perhaps the first civilization did not leave us books but left us stones, megaliths that defy explanation, maps based on memories of coastlines long submerged, legends of floods, fire, and loss whispered across cultures that never met, structures carved with techniques we no longer understand. Perhaps the ancient world was not a time of darkness and ignorance, but a world illuminated by knowledge that has since been lost. If this is true, then we are not standing at the peak of human understanding, but at the beginning of rediscovery. Each buried chamber, each forgotten scroll, each submerged landscape is a clue, a fragment, a piece of a world that vanished long before our own began. And one day, when the right site is uncovered, or the right text is decoded, or the right discovery rises from the sand, we may finally glimpse the truth about that lost chapter. A chapter erased, a chapter buried, a chapter waiting to be found. Thank you for joining this exploration into the forgotten worlds of our past. If these mysteries stirred your curiosity, share your thoughts. Which of these ancient enigmas speaks to you the most? And which one should we explore in even greater depth next time? If you enjoyed this journey, feel free to like the video, share it with others who love ancient mysteries, and consider subscribing so you do not miss the next chapter in our search for the truth. The story of our origins is far from complete, and the next discovery may be closer than we think.